Thing. I was telling Hilo, I said, I just feel like just giving my testimony, even though things just don't seem like it's coming along and stuff. I said, I feel like I still need to give my testimony about what God has done so far. And I was back there and I was praying. I said, God, let me know you're still with me, that you're going to do it. And you never know what God has for who and when. And I just thank God because, God loves me. Even though I'm nobody, He still loves me. And I thank God for that. I do. I thank God for that. And it just made me feel good that God cares for somebody like me that would use a minister, just talk to him and say, hey, somebody needs a little encouragement. We all need encouragement. And as I was thinking, and I told my husband what I felt like doing, and I wrote down things that I'd been through, and in April the 8th is when I first went into the hospital, and the Saturday before, that was a Monday, the Saturday before I went into the hospital, I was so sick, and my niece was having her baby, so I threw her a baby shower. I was sick, but I never told her, because I never tell people, I didn't want people to have to feel sorry for me or whatever. And I just kept going through the day, just struggling, my stomach hurting, and I just felt so bad, and I kept pushing through, and we got all the food ready and barbecued and had all kinds of people over, and by the end of the night I was thinking, man, come on people, go home. And I don't usually do that. I like people to stay, but I was hurting so bad, and there was just a few people remaining here and there, and it was too late. I'd already felt like I was going to pass out, and I went into the restroom, and I figured, well, if I pass out, I'll pass out in the bathroom, nobody will know. So, which that's my logic. And so, when I started to go into the bathroom, I didn't make it that far. I was already passing out, and I went back to the chair, and I was gone. I was passed out. And then I guess people started noticing, the ones that was left, and when I came to Mark and Kevin, and I don't remember how many people were left, and Jared, Tim's friend and stuff, they were all praying, and as they were praying, they said, man, we knew something was wrong because you didn't have the sense of humor like you always do. I'm always saying something back to them or whatever, and I didn't feel good, and I was trying to keep on a smile, and I kept going, God, what is it? I don't want to, and it just seemed like I just kept passing out, and I'd come to, and then it seemed like I passed out again, and my stomach hurt so bad, and I thought, well, it's the food, maybe, I just need, something to eat real good that instead of the barbecue, and I was thinking of so much, and everybody kept just praying and praying, and when I woke up the second time, the young nieces and nephews, tears rolling down their eyes, and they're all praying. And God sometimes does things to get everybody praying. And my brother Mark had leaned over and he was praying, and he said, well, Sondra, I'll tell you what, you know how to make a person pray, because when you get so sick, he goes, somebody has to start praying for you. So he goes, I started praying, and he goes, I really started praying hard. And that made me feel good that people were really trying to pray. And then Sunday, I was sick all day Sunday, and come to church, and I got such a blessing. And I'm still just sick, and stomach just hurting. And so as I went home, I thought, man, I just feel like I'm gonna pass out again. And so as I sat there, he kept saying, you want to go to the emergency room? And I said, no, I don't want to go to the emergency room. I'm fine. I'll be all right. And then the next morning, I was so sick, but I didn't want to bother him. He was going to go help a friend out, and his friend called and said, no, I think you should just stay home today. He goes, I don't need anything. You just stay home, and it'll be all right. And within a half an hour after he had come back out of the living room, I was in there and I was sick. So, and I told him, I said, my sister, she had died, and she's 41 years old. And she died of pneumonia, and I thought, well, maybe I got the flu or something. I didn't know what I had, and I just kept coughing, and so I said, you better call the ambulance, because all of a sudden my sister's, her dying, and that came back to to my mind is her laying there dying. And so as he called 911, I don't remember much. I know I kept just throwing up. My stomach hurt. I kept throwing up, and my stomach was hurting, and then passing out, and then throwing up and passing out. So he called the ambulance. I think he said it took 20 minutes for them to get there. Finally, when they got there, they said my blood pressure was 60/35 or something like that, and I was dehydrated. They couldn't get blood, and it just seemed like everything was just falling apart on me. And I don't remember much, but I remember in and out going into the hospital, them taking me in there, and people praying. You know, when people was coming in there and saying, we're praying, and then I guess I wasn't really with it there for a while, and they said people had gathered everywhere, and they said I had, well, first of all, they said I had MRSA, and then I had pneumonia, and then I had some kind of infection, and they named everything from dehydration to low blood pressure to, they couldn't think of what was wrong with me. And then later on they said there was a little holes in my stomach. I can't think of what they called it, that when you eat peanuts or nuts or something, it goes in there. They said, well, we think that might be what it is. Which all this ended up wrong. But it was still, they kept putting medicine in me and putting medicine in me. For 10 days I was in there. And they even gave me medicine I was allergic to, ended up breaking out. I told her I was breaking out, and she didn't believe me. Turned me over, and I've got just welts because I was breaking out. And so she's like, yeah, and they stopped everything that they had. They had me on 4 different things, and so they stopped it all until they tried to find something I was allergic to. And people was just praying and praying. They said that they were turning down people coming into my room because so many people was coming in to visit me. Now, that made me feel good. After, you know, I don't remember it, but it made me feel good that they had to turn people down to come and see me. But all through this, God was with me. God was with me because 10 days I was in there. 10 days. And I looked at Kevin, and he would come in there every day. I mean, he was getting off work and stuff, and he'd come over there, and you know, that was a long drive for him. But he'd come in there and he'd say, God's going to take care of it, Sondra. I believe God's going to take care of it. And, you know, and I wanted to just say, okay, I'm fine, you know, but I wasn't fine. And I always like to try to tell people I was fine. And 2 or 3 people come in, and I'd see their face and how upset they was, and I'd look at them and say, I'm fine, I'm fine. Because, you know, I didn't want people to have to worry, and I didn't want them to be upset or you know, wondering what was going on, because, you know, but all through this, you know, I had faith that God would heal me, but yet my faith was so weak that I could not even have faith for myself, and that's when God just sends people to start having faith for you. After the 10 days, they said, you seem to be okay. They started trying to get me to walk and stuff. I ended up going home in a wheelchair because they hadn't moved me for the 10 days. And so my legs was not used to moving or anything, and sent me home, and it seemed like everything was better. And I started, a few months later, my stomach started hurting again. And I wrote it down, May the 20th is when I went back into the hospital. And I was sick again. My stomach was hurting, my blood pressure was low, I was dehydrated. But this time I was getting so cold, and I would literally get such shivers all over my body that they would throw covers over me trying to get me warm. And I would sometimes have 6 covers on me. And then even the hospital started bringing heated covers and throwing on me. But they said I didn't have a temperature, so it was fine to throw the covers over me. And they kept throwing the covers over me, trying to get me warm and find out what was going on. And I mean, I was sick. I was so sick. And I was like, God, where are you at? Where are you at? I mean, you get to the point where you're thinking God left you. And you get people saying, you did this and you did that. You know, it's God's probably punishing you. I don't know where people get off to be. They think they're your friends. And you're like, wow, okay, maybe that's true. And then you start thinking about all this stuff and thinking, well, is this true? Did I go out of God's will? Because a lot of times if you move from one place to another, they'll say you're out of the Lord's will. And no matter how much of a minister they are, I've learned that no matter how big or how much that you think that they are so much, in God, they make mistakes too. They do. People make mistakes. Men of God make mistakes. But it's just, the devil will, everybody makes mistakes. And the devil sometimes uses people and they don't even realize the devil's using them. And I've been to that place where the devil was just, I got so mad at people and then I just kind of mouthed off and realized, that was just the devil. I was letting the devil use my emotions to go off instead of saying, thank God for it and thank God for this. And so when the doctors came in, they told me I had a GIST. It's a tumor, a 10-pound tumor in my stomach. And you want to talk about being scared, because I've never had any kind of surgery at all. And so they told me they was going to have to take this out, and they said it was going to be probably I think it was 2-inch thing that they was going to go in there and take out, but they didn't know it was 10 pounds until they got in there. I was scared, so they ended up giving me something just to get me to relax, because I was so scared. I was like, no, because I was raised, by faith. You did everything by faith, and so this was a trying time for me, and people were praying, and I didn't lose my faith, but I wasn't just that faith is up here, and then there's this faith down here, and my faith was way down here. And I knew that God could take care of me, but yet I was still scared. And so as I went back in and they had surgery, I didn't even know about it, because the next morning I woke up and I was like, man, I really don't want that surgery. I told my daughter, I said, I really don't want that surgery. And she said, that's good, Mom. You already got it. You're already home. You're already back in the recovery room. And I was like, oh. But God took care of me through that, because I kept thinking, what if I die in surgery? What if I haven't done this? And then I thought about all the things that, my kids need this, my nieces and nephews need in church. And a lot of people probably think about, well, they need maybe the laundry done. I have no idea what they think about, but all I think about is, man, somebody else needed in church. Someone else needed me to go to them and help them get in church. Because that's my life. I want to see people as happy as I am, to have what I feel when I feel God come up on me, and to speak in tongues, and it's overwhelming. And so I was like, man, I want people to feel that. And when they're not, it just breaks my heart to see people in and out of church. And so as I was laying there thinking all this stuff, God still brought me through. And as He brought me through all this, and I finally went home, it ended up with they cut me with, it ended up with 30 staples I ended up having. So that little 2-inch was clean 30 staples. And they said they didn't realize it was so big until they got in there, and it was 10 pounds. And they said I had it before, but they just didn't, they was thinking it was other things and didn't realize it was this. So God brought me through that. And as I was thinking about all that God brought me through, then I was like, how do I feel so, sometimes I feel so unworthy that I don't understand, because I'm like, well, like Him, He brings out what God has said, and I didn't deserve God to give me a word. I didn't deserve God to give me a word. And so as I was sitting there the other day, I got so sick, and it was the first time that I had really cried, and I sat there and I was hurting so bad. And I told my husband, I walked into the bathroom and I didn't want him to bother, and I told him I was fine. I went to the bathroom and I just started crying. I couldn't stop crying, and I came back and I was just weeping. And I'm literally weeping because the faith that I had, I thought I was so strong, and to find out I wasn't. And I started crying so hard, and my husband finally, I woke him up. I was crying so hard, I was trying to be quiet. And he said, what's going on? And I said, I'm scared. I am scared. And all the faith that I've had, I said, I'm scared. And he said, why are you scared? And I said, I'm afraid that I got that again, because I was hurting so bad. And my stomach, I was leaning over, and everything, I was having the shivers, and I just broke down and started bawling and crying. And I said, God, where are you at? Where are you at? You brought me through so much. Where are you at? But we think our faith is so high sometimes, and then the devil will just jump on you and make you think that you And as I lay there and I'm praying, I said, God, I don't want to be sick again. I don't want to be at the place where I thought I was going to die. Even the surgeon said they didn't think I was going to make it through the night. And the reason I'm testifying this because I want people to realize that just because you sit there and you bawl and you break down doesn't mean that you've lost your faith. It doesn't mean you lost your faith. It means you come to a point where you realize it's only God that you got to depend on. That you're not as strong as you think you are unless you got God. And at the point where I was like, man, I'm fine. I haven't cried. I haven't got upset. And I'm doing good. But see, I am. It wasn't He is. And so God was the one that was putting His hand on me. God was the one that was taking care of me and bringing me through so much. But I got to where thinking, I've got faith. I'm going to be all right. But there's a point where we need to have our faith, but know that God is the one that's there. Because sometimes we get so thinking, man, I'm strong. I can do this. But then we realize we've let go of God's hand, and we're not hanging on the way we should be, or thanking God as much as we should, or praising God as much as we should, because we get to the point where I'm strong. I'm strong. Everybody tells me I'm strong, so I got to be strong. And then when you have that breaking point where you literally start to fall apart, you realize I never would have been here without God. And so that's the point where I started praying, and I don't remember who else. I think it was Tim or Brother Mark, somebody. I remember texting him saying, you got to pray. I think it was Tim saying that you got to pray for me. I'm sick. And so I think it was Tim because Brother Mark was sick again. And so I didn't want to bother him. But I got to the point that I felt so low. I felt like God left me and He didn't love me. And why was I going through this again? But it wasn't that. It was just God saying, Sondra, you need to move on. You need to keep praying more. You need to be thanking me for what I brought you through. And instead of just always being, I'm strong, I got this. Well, I don't got nothing. I don't have nothing without God. And so sometimes we get to the place where we think that we're strong enough to walk. And that song, I can't even walk without you holding my hand. Well, that is true. That is true. You can't walk unless God's holding your hand. And I couldn't make it through another day without God holding my hand. And I thank God. I thank God for holding my hand. I thank God for bringing me through this. Because of all the stuff that I've been through, God brought me through. I am thankful because every day I wake up and if I feel sick or something, I'll just say, thank God, I know I'm going to be okay. And I start praying through it. I'll start praying through it because I've realized I'm not as strong as I think I am. I don't have the faith that I need. But I want to be at the place where I'll have that faith. I want to be at the place where I'll be stronger. And that things won't bother me as much because I thought, man, I'm going through this just fine. But then I just had a breaking point and I broke it. And I was like, God, man, where you at? But then God starts showing me things again. And as I come into church one night, I think it was that next night I'd come to church and I was like, man, I broke and I fell apart and I bawled and I cried. I said, that ain't having faith. That's just falling apart. And I said, I'm not the one to fall apart. I said, I should be having more faith. But I'm only human. I will fall apart sometimes. And if it wasn't for God putting the pieces back together, so many times I've come to church and I just got so relieved because it was like you have such a heavy burden on you. And then someone starts praying for you or giving you a word. It's like you can breathe again. And I thank God for that because God let me breathe again. And as I stood there, God gave me a word for someone. And I thought, God, you still are here. You are still using me. And, that makes you feel good because, sometimes you get to a point where you think, man, what did I do to let God down? What did I do? But, God's just strengthened me for another day. Strengthened me to have a testimony for somebody else. And I'd seen someone said something about the scars is what brought you through. If you didn't have the scars, and then you wouldn't know what you've been through. And because it's easy to forget. And the scars, once they heal, you thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord, for everything you do. And I do have a testimony. I have a testimony that God brought me twice through where I was so low that they thought I was going to die. But I thank God that He brought me through both times. He didn't let me die. And He had something more for me. But I just got to hold on, and I got to give my testimony of what God brought me through. Because somebody else might be going through it. Someone else might be saying, man, I don't know if I can make this surgery, and I don't know if I can do this. But see, if it wasn't for God, I wouldn't be here today. And I thank God for letting me know that I'm okay, that no matter what I did on the decisions I made, because like I told my husband, I said, I know God brought me here. I know God brought me here, even though there's men that say, no, God didn't bring you here. He did. He did, because I felt so at home, more than I've ever done. And I just kept saying, if my husband want to go with me, then, that would be great. And once he started going, if you can't get your family in, then what's the point if you can't have your own family coming to church? And I think, so many people will say, well, I'm just going to stay here. Well, then the rest of their family's going to hell because they don't want to go. And my husband didn't want to go anywhere else. He wanted to come here. And so I made the decision that no matter what happens, my family's going to go to heaven. And I'm going to help my family go to heaven. And if he wants to come here, well, then I'm going to come here and we're going to serve God because He needs saved just as I do need saved. But, we choose, and people say, no, you need to come here, and you need to stay here, and you need to do that, and you need to do this. Well, what does God say? If you can't get your own home saved, then what's the point? And I'm telling you what, ever since God brought us through that door, and I said, God, whatever your will is, He started coming to church, doing good in church. My nieces and my nephews, it just seems like one after another started coming to church. But, I could have sat there and died in the church that I was in. And not, it wasn't that I didn't feel it. I just felt like I needed something because my husband had quit and it was going by myself all the time. And I felt like there was something that I needed to do, but I didn't want to get out of my comfort zone. I wanted to stay where I was comfortable and where nobody would say anything or have anything to say. But, sometimes God has to shake us out of that comfort zone and just scramble up our nest and throw us out and see if we're going to fly. Well, that's what happened because I wanted my husband saved. I wanted him saved because for 13 years when we first got married, I went to church without him. And he never wanted anything to do with it. Then finally he went one night with me. And then he started going for a little bit. But then other things happened and things would upset him. And so he quit going to church. And as I said, I don't know what to do. And he goes, well, if you go somewhere else, I'll go with you. And that just made up my mind right there because we need our family saved. And if he was willing to go somewhere else, and he would go with me, and they're preaching the truth, then I said, well, then that's the Lord's will, because I kept saying, God, I want your will to be done. And my son come up to me, and he said, Mom, I believe the Lord's telling me to go there too, because I told him, I said, you go wherever you want. You're a grown man. Whatever God says, I don't want to pull you out. And he said, I believe God's saying for me to come here too. And, and now my daughter, she comes and visits once in a while, but every time she's like, Pastor Mark. Yeah, and she'll be doing something, she'll say, yeah, that's my Pastor Mark. I've never ever said anything to her, but she says that's her pastor. And that makes me feel good. But even though she ain't in church, she still loves him enough. She said, Mom, he was there all the time when you was in the hospital. He was trying to, do something to talk to Hilo and stuff. And I've seen Hilo come out of his shell. The shell he was in where he wouldn't do things. Now he'll do stuff. He'll barbecue. He'll stay late and do stuff. That is a difference. God has, yeah, Angela said, yeah, but God has changed him around to where he was. And I thank God for that. Because I could have stayed where I was. And my whole family could have just went their way and died or because not died physical but spiritually, because you've got to move when God tells you to. Right. And I really thank God that God sent us here, because every day I'm thankful, because I hear him praying now. When I'm sick, I can hear him praying for me with that before. You know, that makes me feel good because I know that I have stepped out into God's will, even though it was not my comfort zone. I mean, I was totally out of my comfort zone because I thought, you know, I just want to stay right here because it's easier to stay somewhere and not have anybody talk to you about you than to step out. And I never did like to be in the light of everybody. I mean, I act like it and sometimes like I'm crazy and stuff, but I don't like being in the spotlight. I like to get there first so when everybody else comes in I don't feel out of place or whatever. But, you know, I thank God that God has got me to where I am, to be who I am and to be the crazy person that people know. But, you know, I enjoy life. And no matter what I've been through, and though they said this cancer has moved to my liver and stuff, it doesn't matter. I've got God, and if God can take me through 2 things, then why couldn't He take me to the 3rd thing? And I'm telling you what, I thank God because every day I go to the cancer doctor and I wait for him to say that we can't fight it anymore. And then they'll say, well, it got a little bit bigger, but it doesn't matter because I told him, I said, you know, I've actually got peace on it now. That I held my breath, and when they'd say something, I felt like I was going to pass out, but yet I would try to keep calm and stay strong. But, you know, sometimes it just gets to you. And I thank God because God has been strengthening me because I realized I needed strength. When I thought I was so strong, I felt, you know, I was like, man, I'm doing good. I'm staying strong. And then I fall apart and realize I ain't as strong as I think I am. I need to start praying. But, you know, God has to sometimes just shake us up and let us know that, you know, He's the one that we got to depend on. No matter what, He's the one that's going to give us the peace through it all. And I thank God because He has been giving me peace. And once in a while I'll get that fear or something, but then I know it's just Satan trying to get a hold of me and say, you know, you're not this, you're not doing what you should be, and you should have did this and should have did that. But, you know, then I look around and God gives me the memories of people coming in the church and different things happening. You know, that makes me feel good because I know God cares. I know God that He's been here for me, and it just makes me feel good that I know that God loves me enough to take care of me through all that I'm going through. That one day when I go back to the doctor, He's going to say, there, we can't find nothing. I know He's going to say that because I know God's healing me. He might not do it when I want it, but I know it's coming. And I thank God. I really do thank God. Brother Shannon.